of you, years ago, Home Haven put together a PPP, putting a plan in place, nicknamed PPP, and about advanced care planning. Now, Becca, how do I click forward?
I got it.
Okay, click me one.
Why am I not going? Okay. There we go.
And you recall perhaps a document that looks like this that was handed out, and Becca's reproduced it on the screen. We're not going to go through all the points, but I recall it in 2018 because Pat and I were fairly new to Home Haven at that point. But this gentleman named Peter Wells, I know a Peter Wells came to the Woodbridge Library. And the Woodbridge Library at that point hosted Amity Village and Westerville Village. And they talked about PPP. Lori also worked on the PPP, as did Linda West work on PPP. But I remember Peter going through this, and all three of them going through it, telling why this is so important. And here's some of the salient points. We're not going to go into the details, but as a footnote, it's Lori's intention, our intention to get back into this. Becca's going to talk about a portion of this, but we know there are other portions to address, and we're trying to figure out when and how to do that. But part of it is our advanced care directives, which Becca will talk about quite a bit more this morning. How to plan so when you die, your inheritors, your kids, your spouse know what to do and what legally they can and cannot do. What happens to things. Becca will talk about that. Contingency plans in the event of incapacity. What happens if I get sick and can't take care of myself? What does Pat legally have the ability to do or not do? Or if she's not around, what does Becca have to do or whatever in terms of legally and directives, and what my intentions are, will they be carried out? That includes medical providers, et cetera, what they're supposed to do, et cetera. Do they know my intentions? The next big section is aging in place, a guide to resources. This was put together with a lot of work, and I dug it out the other day. It was like 30 pages of long-term care facilities, places like in-home providers, care managers, nursing homes, they used to be called, what have you, in the New Haven area that Peter and others vetted and qualified in this document, which is probably good, but somewhat out of date, but a good guide. And I think Kate can probably get you a copy of that if you've lost yours, or if you're new to Home Haven and want to have one. Next section, geriatric care managers. Lori brought a few care managers into a subsequent meeting for all of Home Haven and put them up on the stage and said, tell us what you do and how you do it. It was quite valuable. So, and Lori also put together, I'm going to say, a list of maybe 5 or 6 vetted care managers that Home Haven had talked to and vetted and approved. And that care list has been changed a bit, I'm quite sure. Home safety and assessment and comfort. Kate, help me out. Who's the guy's name who does that?
Bruce Lawler does the home assessments.
Bruce Lawler came to our house early on and walked around our house and poked around and looked in bathrooms and closets and rugs and all over the place, and light switches and grab bars, and typed up an assessment of our house for aging in place. He's big on getting rid of throw rugs on the floor. They are slippery and they roll up and they catch your feet and they're dangerous. So we got rid of ours. Or we put a slider mat under it so it doesn't slide. Other safety things, rails so you can get in and out of the bathtub safely or the shower safely, et cetera. He gave an assessment our responsibility was to go get what we wanted to do done. And we did go through that list and got quite a few things done. One or two things we still haven't done. I'm not sure why, but I came across the list. But that's part of your membership privilege of Home Haven, to get an assessment. It's your obligation, if you so choose it, to get the work done. And we can make some recommendations if you don't know a good plumber, etc. Last section, alternatives aging in place. Life care alternative booklet, I guess was I alluded to before. Other assisted living and at-home programs. You want to help me with anything here that I've missed?
No. Home Haven has vetted a couple of agencies that provide home care or medical services, but our members have not been using them very much because of COVID and concern with infection. So we will probably have to go back and look at those agencies again in the near future and reevaluate their appropriateness for our members. And of course, you are totally allowed, willing, and able to use any services that you want. These were just a couple of large services that people had kept asking us, where should I start? And so we did talk to the administrators of those services.
So that's a basic brief outline of PPP. And here's some steps that we got into. And again, I won't go into this in detail, and you can get a copy of this from Kate if you can't find yours or don't have one. Very briefly, gathering financial papers. Becca will talk about that too. What is some of the information you need to get together so that whoever survives you can make sense out of it? Who must get called first? Not just your kids, but your accountant, your lawyer, financial planner. They ought to be on a list so your kids know who to call, or your inheritors know who to call to get some assistance. Passwords, yikes. We've got some methodologies to log those down. Update your beneficiaries. They'll kind of change as their investments change and life changes. Make sure those are updated every so often, periodically. Check credit cards. Credit cards come and go. If and when I die, I'll have some credit cards. Do my beneficiaries, inheritors know how to stop them, turn them on, drain them out, pay them off, etc. Advanced directives, again, Becca will talk about that. Who's a money person who can take care of this? Do you have an attorney or accountant or trusted financial person? Review your wills and trusts. So we did ours years ago, and Pat and I have another appointment with our attorney in a couple of months, and our financial planner to say, okay, here's what's happened in the last 4 years. What do we need to update and clarify, and what has changed? Funeral plans, interesting. Pat and I, just as a quick footnote, tomorrow, Pat and I are going to Best Place Forest up in Litchfield, Mass area. Best Place Forest, there are a lot of ways of being buried, and I'll do this very quickly. One way is to be buried in a forest owned by a trust and protected by a trust. You can buy a tree or rent a tree, and we can be buried at the bottom of that tree. That's another option. We may not do it, but we're going to go look at it tomorrow. There are lots of ways of doing funerals and burials and cremations.
And we had the presentation
We had
from
yeah,
Lee Webster just this month.
yeah, a week or so ago. And Becca keeps in contact with Lee Webster. So if you have a question, clarification of what you can do and how you can do it in Connecticut, ask Becca. She'll get a hold of Lee and she'll research it for you. How your bills are going to be paid. So anyway, this yellow sheet is just done a brief synopsis of what it's about. Again, that's available from Kate. These are basic fundamental points of PPP homework, if you will. So with that, Becca, why don't you click and take it from here?
Great. Before I click, I just I added to this slide, it is a surviving spouse, but I added an adult child. It's good stuff for an adult child if they're the survivor to go through.
Oh, yeah, oh, we're on the right side, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm Becca Allen. And I am excited to be here as a people person and an extrovert. Being in presentation mode, it's very hard to see people. So I'm just going to assume that there's good energy and good smiles. And at the end, I will see all your bright, shiny faces again. So we're going to do a couple things over the next 15 minutes. I'm going to tell you who I am, and I'm going to tell you what I do. I'm going to talk about advanced care planning and why it's important. I am going to share an amazing experience doing advanced care planning with Amity Village. And why we are here is I'm hoping to entice people to participate in an advanced care planning series for 12 Home Haven members in June and July. And there'll definitely be time left over to ask any kind of questions. So let's get started. So my name is Becca, and my day job, I work for a national foundation. I am a trained social worker. I'm a married mom of 2 young adults, 19 and 21. 21 is graduated from UConn in a couple of weeks. I'm also a former foster parent, which was one of the most life-giving experiences of my life so far. I live in Westville, shout out to the Westville folks here, and I am a very proud daughter of Rick and Pat. It is not something I usually include in my bio, but in this case, yes, Pop and Pat are my parents.
It's good credits.
Right. I am also an end-of-life doula, which is a non-medical professional who helps someone prepare for their death or the death of a loved one and reflect on their life. You may be more familiar with the term birth doula, and a birth doula helps parents prepare for the birth of their child by way of education and developing a birth plan. Birth doulas also actually assist during the birth of a baby, and they also provide aftercare by checking in on the health and wellness of the parent and the child. An end-of-life doula provides similar support before, during, and after death, but it happens on the other end of the life spectrum because birth and dying are the only 2 unifying events that all humanity shares. One major difference between birth and end of life is that birth, you have a pretty good idea when the baby will arrive. The opposite is true for end of life. The date of a healthcare crisis or your death are uncertain and could come at any time. Unfortunately, none of us is guaranteed a peaceful death at a ripe old age. Another difference between birth and end of life is that in American culture now, and for some time, we do everything to avoid talking about end of life. Everything, everything, everything. And we think maybe it won't happen to us. So as an end-of-life doula, I am bound and determined to make an impact on how we can prepare for, support, and celebrate people's end of life, just like we do the birth of a child. So I'm here to talk about advanced care planning, which is something I help people do. So advanced care planning is a process that helps adults at any age or stage of health understand and share their personal values and preferences regarding future medical care. Advanced care planning provides direction when a person is not able to make and or talk about their healthcare choices. So this part of advanced care planning is really about health and medical choices. There are typically 2 components that people are most familiar with advanced care planning, and that is the healthcare proxy, which is also a healthcare agent, which is also a healthcare representative, which is also a medical durable power of attorney. There's so many names for the same role. And basically that is a person that you select who will make medical decisions for you if and when you're unable. The second document in advanced care planning is called a living will, and that's a document that outlines your treatment preferences for end of life. Oftentimes, people do those 2 pieces and they are all set. They think they're all set, but there are 3 critical components of advanced care planning that often are forgotten, but are really important. The first one is actually taking the time to think about your preferences. And it's kind of a big deal to think about quality of life, what you would like at the end of the life. It's trying to take some time to think about what that really means to you. And that certainly changes over time. Someone in their 20s versus someone in their 50s versus someone in their 70s, your preferences may change over time. The second thing that is oftentimes avoided is actually having conversations with your healthcare proxy and loved ones. Sometimes there are people who write, my daughter's my healthcare proxy, and may not ever tell their daughter that they're their healthcare proxy. There are other times where it's just people don't know how to have a conversation about their healthcare choices or end of life. So having a conversation with your healthcare proxy and loved ones is really crucial. And then finally, and this is certainly helps in the age of technology, is having documents available during a healthcare emergency. So those are the three things that we don't want to miss and that are oftentimes overlooked when we do advanced care planning. So I want to tell you a quick story about my mom, Karen Allen. My mom, Karen Allen, in September of 2019, had an unexpected healthcare emergency. Oops. And she went into the emergency room and was admitted to the cardiac ICU at Yale New Haven Hospital. Because we had done our advanced care planning a couple of years before, as the oldest daughter, I went into the emergency room with my document or with her documents as healthcare proxy and living will, and I very excitedly gave them to the doctors. They uploaded them into my chart, and the physicians knew, the treatment team knew that I was the decider. Now, it's important to share that my mom was actually, she was talking, but she was really out of it. So the physicians actually appreciated that there was a healthcare proxy and someone making the decisions. There are a couple procedures to try to figure out kind of what's happening with mom, and that was fine. We needed to figure out what was happening with her heart. But then there came a moment where they did a procedure and the results actually had us going in a completely different direction. So there was a time where I was sitting in a room, and thank goodness I had Pat by my side. Everybody should have Pat by their side for these conversations. And there were 3 or 4 physicians suggesting what should happen with my mom and what big medical procedures should happen with my mom. So I was asking them questions, taking in, what do we do if we do it? What happens if we don't do it? And I was integrating that information with my mom, with conversations that I've had with my mom over my life. Like, what does quality of life mean to her? What would she want in this certain situation? And I felt it was really helpful that I had conversations with my mom about what she wanted as I was taking in this information from the doctors. I actually chose not to do the big procedures that they suggested, which was a big deal. But at the end, I felt really reassured that my mom chose me for a reason and that I knew what she wanted. I cannot imagine having this conversation and being in that situation without knowing what my mom wanted, because it's a really stressful moment. So I wanted to share that I've been in that space in a role, and I'm glad that I had Pat by my side and I knew kind of what I was doing. So it is absolutely okay not to do anything, and just kind of not do advanced care planning. A lot of people do it and there are fine outcomes. These are potentially some of the outcomes if you don't have an advanced care plan. We have a very robust healthcare system in America. And if you don't choose, the medical system will choose for you. And those decisions may not be aligned with your preferences and wishes. We are also in an era of frequent and normalized overtreatment of the very old and the very ill. And it's also very costly. The other thing is, by thinking, because we can't always anticipate a healthcare crisis or when a healthcare crisis will occur, your loved ones will be making these decisions during a time of crisis without guidance from you. And as I just talked about with my mom, it was crisis. It was hard, but I had an idea of my mom choosing me and also having conversations about what she wanted. And again, this is absolutely a fine choice to make. It's okay. I'd also like to provide another option about doing advanced care planning. So if you do advanced care planning, you are actually taking the time to think about your healthcare preferences when you are clear-headed and not in the throes of a healthcare emergency. You are starting or maybe revisiting a conversation about your healthcare preferences with your healthcare proxy and loved ones so that they have a roadmap when the time comes. They have some kind of idea about what you want or what you prefer. By thinking about and communicating with your healthcare preferences, you are actually increasing the chance that your wishes will be followed if you were to get sick. And this is the last one is my favorite because this really is a gift. You are giving the gift of talking about what your desires are at the end of your life. So when that time comes, your loved ones are not left agonizing over those decisions. So I want to tell you about this amazing group of people. I think Trish is on the call. So I've been meeting with these folks from Amity Village over the last 8 months. About their advanced care planning. And last summer, I talked to Dad and Pat and said, you have folks that maybe could help me out on my end of life doula stuff. So we met with them in September, and the idea was I was going to ask them questions. They're going to give me some great feedback, and then off I went. And at about 10 minutes into the conversation, the group had just as many questions for me as I had for them. So we talked about kind of sharing their excitement about when people like me come and do trainings and they get really excited about what they're learning, and all the energy is like, yes, we need to do this. The training ends, life starts to happen again, and enthusiasm wanes and the work doesn't get done. We also said, like, you know where also that happens? Like, I'm going to lose a lot of weight, or I'm going to start getting physically fit. You're very excited. You know you need to do those things. Life happens, and then it doesn't happen. And what we realized was, you know what? We need either a personal trainer or a workout buddy. So we decided for many months and weeks to be each other's workout buddies, but about advanced care planning. So off we went. We started learning from each other, sharing insight and stories, supporting each other, completing the advanced care steps, all of them, and actually getting them done, all the while drinking tea and eating scones. One member recently reflected on the power of Amity Village members' deep wisdom matched with my knowledge of advanced care planning and being an end-of-life doula, and how those coming together, the wisdom and the knowledge, made this kind of a powerful experience. So I also met with a smaller group recently from Amity Village. Within the last month. It was a mini version, a much quicker pace, no scones, but they learned about advanced care planning, and we also got the work done. The difference, each time I'm meeting with people inside Amity Village and also other folks, and each time I iterate how we are doing the work together. What I learned from this last Amity Village was it was too quick, and the social worker in me was really pleased to be like, this is big decisions. These are big conversations. I think we can slow down the pace. So, so each time I'm learning something and adapting the approach. So what is next? So the reason why I am here is we want to keep the momentum going about doing advanced care planning. So we're going to host a 4-part series in June or July for up to 12 people. Now, my sweet spot is usually, it feels like 6 to 8. So 12 people, we're going to see what happens. Hopefully if 12 sign up, we're going to have 4 sessions. And let me tell you what we're going to talk about over the sessions. The first is we are going to get to know each other. I'm going to provide an overview of advanced care planning, and I'm going to talk about healthcare in America in 2 minutes. It's going to be the quickest snapshot of healthcare in America. The second session, we are going to be talking about healthcare proxies and agents. What are they responsible for? What kind of characteristics and qualities do you really want in a healthcare proxy? And we're also going to start working on our living will by using the Conversation Project's starter toolkit. The Conversation Project, if you've not gone to their website, has a lot of information that helps you think about your quality of life, your healthcare preferences, and helps you start the conversation. During the third session, we're going to continue having our living will discussions within the group. And you're also going to start, if you haven't already, having conversations with your healthcare proxy and loved ones. And the fourth session is a signing ceremony. And what we'll be signing are the advanced care planning documents In particular, the ones if you are going to, if your hospital is Yale New Haven, we have documents that will be uploaded to MyChart. And it also provides us some time to ask questions about other advanced care planning. What happens after just thinking about healthcare? Throughout our sessions together, we're going to have open discussion. There might be a writing exercise. There's definitely going to be homework, but there's going to be even more conversation. This really is about talking and doing. I'm also going to be checking in with participants as needed, just in case you get stuck or want to hear about really cool things. So if you are hearing this and you're like, I don't know if this is the right series for me. So a few things for you to think about. If you have no idea what a healthcare proxy does or what a living will is, this is a series for you. If you've done your will and it includes the healthcare proxy and living will, that's great, but that's not enough. Paperwork is good, but not entirely helpful in the absence of conversation. So let's start figuring out how we can have conversations. If you don't have a surviving spouse or you don't have a child, you are actually not alone. Currently, there are 73 million boomers, and of those, 20% of those boomers don't have children. So you don't have to actually say, your spouse or your child is your healthcare proxy. Let's figure out who in your life makes the most sense to be your healthcare proxy. If this whole subject feels kind of overwhelming and you don't know where to start, or you don't even know if you want to have a conversation about this or do it, come in. We'll figure it out together. And finally, if there's any interest in how you want to end at the end of your life to go, and how you may want to be supported by your loved ones through that process, there are things that you are empowered to do to make it happen. Let's talk about those things and figure them out together. So at the end of our series, at the end of our 4 sessions, here's what I hope that we'll accomplish. First of all, you've met new people and learned from each other in the group, that you've thought about your healthcare preferences and have had conversations with your healthcare proxy and loved ones, that you've signed the advanced care planning documents and will upload them to MyChart. And finally, that you are hopefully left with wanting to know more about how to prepare for your death and reflect on your life. So if you're interested, here's my contact information. And here are the dates that are available that will be meeting at the Mitchell Library in Westville. So I'm going to take this down so I can see. There you go.
So I have 2 comments.
Oh boy. Oh, geez. Oh my God. Yeah.
Number 1, Karen still lives.
Oh gosh, I didn't say that. No, my mom's great. My mom is great. Forgot to say
Thank you,
that.
Becca. She still lives, and she's
She is great.
delightful. And Pat and I visit her often, and she's wonderful. So Karen still lives, Becca's mom. Number 2 was, I said to Becca, no, we're fine. We have our living will from our attorney, from Jebra, from our attorney. And she said, take it out and look at it.
Mhm.
Well, first of all, it's like 2 pages, legalese. Second of all, it does name Pat and Becca, but there's no phone number. There's no email address. There's no way to contact Becca and Pat, especially in emergency. Number 3, if I get checked in at Yale Health in emergency, they don't have that document from my attorney. It's in my file system and at the attorney's. If they had it, it's 2 pages long. It's an emergency. They're not going to read all that stuff. The documents that Becca creates can't be uploaded at Yale, at MyChart or other electronic systems. So the emergency personnel can get access to it right away and know precisely what your druthers are and who to contact and how to contact them.
I also have to say that I'm not creating the documents. Actually, Yale New Haven health systems across the country are actually, they have their own healthcare proxy and living will forms. So these are the Yale New Haven health system forms that we'll be using.
You want to unmute yourself for questions? Kate, can you unmute us? en masse?
Yes,
Harriet, what do you
Harriet.
know?
I have a very large question / issue with all of this. You talk to some person and make them your proxy and do all this stuff, and you are putting an enormous burden on them. More of a burden, I think, than you would be putting on them if they had to decide something at the last minute. My father didn't want to be cremated. I think it was because he was, I don't know, he imagined himself burning up or something. It happened that we didn't have him cremated, but it wasn't because of what he wanted, because if it turned out to be something necessary, important, useful, he was dead.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, he wasn't going to know about it. I don't believe in heaven or afterlife or anything like that. We would have just done it. It seems to me in some ways, well, in legal ways about my money and my house and those things, of course, that's all the legal stuff. But my wishes, they don't count.
So I think there are two things that make me, I'm first going to go to what Pat said to me a couple weeks ago about when
Okay,
we
and I'm
got to,
sorry for being
No,
sort of
No.
silly.
no, this is
No.
great. This is great. There are two things
Okay,
that make
good.
me think. At the Amity Village, the group that I just showed, in one of our meetings a couple weeks ago, Pat turned to me because we were talking about funerals and who's going to say something. And Pat said, I'm dead. Why do I need to be thinking of this? And it's interesting because I was doing the same stuff for me and I had a different take, like, oh no, actually, I know what songs I want. And I know, so both are true, right? Like you're going to do the very best, whether there's planning or preparation or not. The difference in a healthcare emergency is someone is making you make that decision. That's between, do I cremate, or what kind of celebration? That is one thing. In a healthcare emergency, someone needs to be a decider, and it is a time of crisis and it is time of worry. And if you have siblings who have differing opinions, if your siblings and there's no healthcare proxy, also some doctors will say, like, I'm not doing anything until you figure it out. So
That's
it is
interesting.
messier, and trying to say, like, have conversations. And the other thing is, the third thing is that I don't want to get lost in this, is just because you are thinking about this and have a plan, life changes. Like life changes. It's about entrusting the people that you've asked to do their very best, but also say, this is what matters to me most. So
It matters to me now.
yes,
Yeah, but again, when I'm dead,
yes, it's this, we're talking about the before times.
right. So I can let them know it matters and they can do what they want anyway, is what I'm
Yes.
saying. Yeah,
Y-
okay.
Absolutely. And well, that's actually, I see Pat. So the thing about advanced care planning, the most important part about advanced care planning is your healthcare proxy, because
Yeah,
they
I
can
see that.
override
Yeah.
what's in your living will. Because what I know now, whenever I'm in that situation, it may change. The healthcare proxy is the decider. That's why it's so important to pick someone who is ready for the task, and that you kind of say, this is what's important to me.
And can that person, can I say to that person, I don't want it to hurt? And will the doctor believe that?
So
Will
I
the
would
doctor, could the doctor say, well, she'll be in pain for about the first 3 hours, but then blah, 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 blah.
So even if you say, I don't want it to hurt, and we were having conversation, I would say, I want to know a little bit about, what do you mean hurt? Do you mean your body? Do you mean 10 years from now? Like, what does that mean? To give me a picture. And then I would say, okay, doctor, this is what I heard from my mom a couple of years, or my partner, or my whatever, a couple of years ago. And she just doesn't want it to hurt. And this is what it means. Can you tell me about that? It's a little bit,
good.
it's a little bit of something that may at the time have nothing to do with anything, but it's that I heard you and I'm advocating for what you want.
Becca,
Yes.
yeah, I have a couple of questions. So after naming surviving spouse, if you're in that situation
Yep.
as your healthcare proxy, then if you have several children, now I'm just sharing this, I do. And at first we had 2 children share, and then we heard many, many stories that that was really not a good idea because if there was a critical emergency, then you got 2 opinions. So we have changed it
Great.
to 1 of our children, and I wanted to know your
The
idea.
answer was basically,
And I also wanted to know, we've been told recently by our physician that you can have all of those sheets of paper about you want this if that happens, or you don't want this if that happens. But if it's the kind of emergency which requires full code or not, the doctors only want to know if it's full code or not. They do not have time, nor do they bother to read all the other things you have written.
Yep.
What's your take on that?
So 2 things. So the first about, you should have a primary healthcare proxy and a secondary. No sharing, you got the right information, no sharing roles, because also your kids might be in disagreement, which is not helpful. And you're also not going to be 2 people in the same position. So a primary and a secondary.
Right.
In thinking about healthcare proxies, you may want to consider, I mean, there are certain qualities and characteristics you want in proxy. Proximity is also important. So if there's someone who can't be in the hospital kind of helping make decisions because they're too far away, you might want to consider that. My husband's my mother-in-law lives in Norwalk. Her daughter lives in South Carolina, and her daughter Jessie is the primary, so she's farther away, and Bill is secondary. And we've talked that in the healthcare emergency, Jessie will say, Bill is primary and can make decisions until I get there. So Jessie's willing to come in, spend time in the hospital. So it's supporting, you can do that, but you really want someone in the hospital making the decisions. The second question, I totally forgot.
About full code.
Oh,
or-
yes. So
What does full code mean?
so in the, whether or not you want to be resuscitated or not. So the documents, the living will, I think it's called treatment preferences, that Yale New Haven Hospital has you fill out are very similar to or almost exactly similar to the ones that are at the Department of Public Health. And those are big decisions. Do I want life support? Do I not want life support? The nuances of pain that Harriet brought up is not on a living will. That's information that is shared with your healthcare proxy. And probably if you filled out a living will, Diane, you probably answered those questions already, but they're big ones.
Yeah, and but you did mention in an email that you should be reviewing periodically. So this is a kind of basic question. I don't have those forms.
Oh, great.
Other than the ones that I already filled out if I wanted to make changes. So where would I get those?
I can send you those Yale New Haven Health forms. I can email them to you.
And is that
They're on the Home Haven website too.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're under documents on the Home Haven website. And they're still under Leo Cooney's talk on
Yes.
September 21st, I think,
Yes.
which is where from which I printed them out, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Diane, can I also say we in the group that I just met with, there were folks that updated their will 3 years ago, and then the last update for another couple was in 1997. So there is kind of a rule of thumb, and I think Cooney was, I don't remember where I got this information, but that you should review these advanced care documents with the 5 Ds at the start of each decade of your life. If there's been a death of someone in your life or your healthcare proxy, if you've had a divorce, so that you might want to change who your healthcare proxy is. If you've been diagnosed with something big and it might change how you feel, diagnosis, and if there's been a healthcare decline, that's another, it's kind of a rule of thumb of the 5 Ds, or anytime, like
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Pat.
So I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts on this process. As you all know, I'm a retired health professional. And I know that this is important to do, but no, we didn't do it. I mean, we kind of talked about what's important to us, but we never sat down and really looked at the papers. And I had different ideas about which one of my children should be the second. You know, as Becca said, I've got a daughter in California. Well, that's not going to help much if there's an emergency in New Haven, but I do have a son in New Haven. So I decided, well, maybe we better switch this. But I want to say that because of this process, I actually set a date with my son and my daughter-in-law, who happens to be a nurse, and said, I want to sit down and talk with you and go through all of these documents so that we have communicated what my feelings are, my preferences are right now. And I said, first of all, you will do the best you can.
Yes.
And I trust you. So, you know, if it doesn't feel right at that time, go ahead, make the best decision you can. This is what I feel now. I have had a great life. I love you, and I know you love me, and you will do the best you can. And I think that was so important, but it was hard. I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple of decades, and I have never done that. And then I took the documents that we signed and I sent them to my other two kids and said, okay, because Scott is the closest to me and that proximity is important, I do expect that if you guys, the two in California, decide to come out and be part of this process, that he will talk to you about it also. But he will be the decision maker if Rick cannot be the decision maker. I also want to share a quick story about when my mother was very sick. I have 10 siblings. At the time that she died, there were only 9 of us living. And because there was no healthcare proxy, the physician would not go with the majority rule. And we have one sister who is mentally ill, and she could not say it's okay for mom to die. And so we had 8 of us saying it's time for mom to die.
One person.
And one sister going, no, I can't have mom die. And so fortunately, mom died anyway in a few days, but it could have been a protracted process that would have been very uncomfortable for the rest of us. And yet trying to be understanding for my sister who was having a hard time processing this. So I think it is important. And as much as I struggled and postponed this discussion with my son until, okay, we're gonna meet with our group tomorrow and we have to have this done. It was a very uplifting and positive experience. And I would encourage you all to do that.
Celeste, I think you had a question before. Celeste, Celeste, unmute yourself first. Still muted. There
Okay,
you go. What do
all
you
right.
got?
Couple of things. One, it seems to me it's almost a benefit for the people who are left behind to have some kind of a pattern to follow rather than willy-nilly whatever they think and who thinks that and so forth. So in a sense, you're not burdening them, you're helping them to figure out what to do next, kind of. Okay. The other thing is, and this is personal, but every time you have one of these things, I'm away for part of it. I don't know what to do about that. I said every single time. Now I looked at the June, I'm away the first time. I was away the first time this last one. I'm away the second time. I was like, I want to do it desperately, okay? But I haven't figured out how to do it without being there. So I don't know. We got to talk to you about that at some other time, but I will talk to you. But I'm thinking it's a pattern to follow. Even if you jump off it, at least it's something that you know, this goes, then this goes, then we do this, then we do this. And you have something to back you up at each step if necessary.
I wanted to say that yes, it takes if we had had one for my father, it happened that the three of us get along really well. And we sort of know his wishes well enough that the sentence and a half in his living will about, extreme measures and all of this stuff, which had no bearing when you're on the phone with the surgeon at 1:45 on a 3-way call between Hartford and New Haven and Florida. And they're wanting to know, you've got 3 more minutes to decide
Yes.
whether you're going to do the procedure or not. And that's hard enough. And so, yeah, knowing exactly any of that helps. And then the little things like the passwords. Yeah, even if you don't give them, tell them where your secret stash of money is and the key and the list of the passwords. But the health, we are lucky in that the three of us get along well enough and are all on the same page, and were at my father's crisis time. But it would have been, certain things might have been easier, especially with the phone calls waking you up to make those decisions. And it
You
doesn't,
couldn't get into his computer, as I remember.
couldn't get into his computer, couldn't get into his phone. I am still trying to figure out utilities that he had the bills sent to him in his email, and we never got the bills. Yeah, couldn't get into his Amazon account and cancel that. None of that stuff was able to be done, and it's been a year and a half.
There, a lot of these conversations, Kate, around end of life or healthcare lead to other conversations like what you're saying, like Dad, okay, when they're alive, like Dad, I need to I need your
And
passwords, tell me something.
It's
So
oversharing, but I had a book. We have it in the office. I photocopied a book for each of them, over 45 pages, that wanted all of this stuff. And I found it under the bed in Massachusetts 6 months after he died.
Was it filled out?
No.
Because it also goes back to the whole workout buddy thing, right? Like I think about all the things in my life that I'm like, am I really going to spend the time to do that? It's
So
the
Trish,
accountability partners.
So Trish, you're the only non-Alan who's gone through this with
But
that.
an
Do you
Alan.
have any comments, Trish? You're so unmute.
I know I never would have filled this out on my own. I was really helped by the fact that I was doing it with people that I'd gotten to know, and I felt I was part of something larger than myself that helped me to do it.
Yeah. Judith, you're muted, Judith.
I just realized that, sorry. I'm wondering how we can get more people besides these 13 to sign up for these sessions, and wondering, I mean, as a village leader, I guess I should stop wondering and do something like write a letter to my village, which I'm thinking of out loud as I speak. But Rick, are we the only 2 village leaders here? No, Celeste. Well, yeah.
Yes. So perhaps an article in a paper. When's the first session, Becca?
June 8th.
So maybe, Becca, maybe you draft an article for the paper. Boy, it's gonna
Well,
be
she
too
can
late
only
for
do
me.
12 at a time, so.
Yeah.
Well, but I think our concern is, will we get 12?
Second, right.
Since we only have like 12 people. Diane, turn your speaker on. Diane?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I just want to thank all of you, and Becca in particular. And I have to say, this has been wonderful for us. We've done all of the things that you've talked about and more. I actually have a room in my house that all the children know is the room that has the passwords, the deeds, living will, and actually I still give Home Haven credit, because many years ago Sheila gave a presentation, Sheila Rostow, and handed out some forms. I think they were Vermont something forms, and it started us on the project. The only thing we haven't done is to sit down with all three of our children. And we really want to sit down with all three
Yes.
because we want all of them, even though just one of them is the proxy, to hear the same thing and
Yep.
ask whatever questions.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much. Sorry I have to leave.
Thank
And
you, Diane.
Thank you.
everybody for their questions.
And
Hi, Diane.
other questions or comments or concerns, please?
Well, I just want to admit that I thought we had done it all, but then I looked at the list of 10 things for spouses. We did number 3.
Well, okay.
Here are the passwords. They're in a steel box. But there's a lot of other stuff on that list that needs doing. And I still have the old papers and so on from the Linda West and Peter Wells days. So that shouldn't be so impossible, but of course it is.
And those two I have put up on the website in documents. You'll need to
Good.
log in. Both of those pages,
Good.
the other one, the more booklet, what was it called, Rick?
The white page and the yellow page.
The booklet
Um,
on,
Both of those are up. What's the
Okay.
consensus? Becca, can you send me those forms that Yale uses?
Oh, yeah.
We have,
Um,
Kate.
You
They're
probably
have 'em?
have them.
No,
Yeah.
but they're buried, but Judith, they're buried. They're buried.
they're buried? Okay, well, Kate could make them.
Nobody knows where they are.
unbury them.
If I can put them in the documents. The folder is called Putting a Plan in Place. And so right
Okay.
now it has
Okay.
10 steps
Good.
to help a surviving spouse, aging in place, the first things first, and then the Life Care Alternatives 3rd edition.
Good.
Um,
And when you realize you're not getting it done, call back up.
Yeah.
Judy, you look like you had a question on your mind. I could see you pursing your lips, Judy. Did you have a question?
Me?
Yes.
No, I didn't have a question. I am so delighted that this group offering is coming up because I have had this file for a long, long time, and I know that it's important. I don't have a spouse any longer, and I have 3 sons. And I need to get this stuff organized, and I know from life experience that doing it with a group will really be helpful to me.
Yes.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
for us.
so I would like to say something, and I hope it's all right with Lori that I'm saying it. When we started this process and the original group that you saw the picture of found it so very helpful, we also recognized that Becca is a professional and she can't keep doing this as a freebie.
Mhm.
So Home Haven agreed to pay her to do a session that is open for all of Home Haven,
Up to 12 people.
up to 12 people. And it is my hope that if there are many more people than those 12 people, that we can find an additional time to do it. You cannot do it in a group of 200 people.
No.
Because it's the interaction that is important. You had there's a
Sheila.
question.
Sheila, comment.
Yeah, quick comment. This has been under discussion both at the board level and at the finance committee level. And I'm sure that something is going to get worked out, but we don't know quite what it is. I think it will be a matter of Laurie and Becca coming up with a plan that goes beyond this upcoming session for 12 people. And I think part of that might be based on how much interest there is to fill those 12 people. So even if you can't go, and Celeste, I understand, I would like to do it too, but the last 2 weeks in June, I am going to be away. So I am going to register my interest with
Good.
Home Haven and make sure that they know that I can't do it this time, but that I would like to do it the next time something is scheduled. And then see if we have a series of meetings that are the size that Becca particularly prefers, and how much the overall plan will cost. And then it's going to be a matter of the finance committee making a recommendation to the board on the finance part, and Laurie, of course, making a recommendation to the board on the need for this among our membership.
Good, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
So Celeste, with that in mind, Celeste, you have a conflict, but do send Becca email an interest.
I'm
So-
going, yeah, I'm
Right.
Yeah.
going
There's-
to.
There's
I'm
also
gonna-
yeah.
I'm
Go
gonna be
ahead,
putting
Kate.
it in the HAPS this Friday. Tomorrow, I believe, about the sessions.
Great.
That had been my plan anyway, but I'm gonna have them, I'm gonna add something about, if you can't make this but are interested, please let me know.
Because
Right.
if it really is, there are 4 people that can do those dates, let's postpone it so we can have more people participate, even though 4 would be awesome.
Or if we get the 8 or 12 for the first session, but
Yeah.
there's 6 people, 8 people who can't make it, but would want to do
Absolutely.
later.
Absolutely.
Um,
And I think that would be great, because the more the better. And also just want to I hope that you took from this conversation that it's not just about filling out the forms. It's about the conversations that you have with yourself and your loved ones. It's about, and with each other. Like, that is the richness of doing this work together.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
for being
Thank you.
here,
Thank you. Thank you.
Listening and good questions. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Nicely done.
Okay,
Thank you.
Becca.
All right. Take care,
All
everybody.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Becca, I'm gonna call you.